Welcome to the Blue Cafe. We offer stories of betrayal, infidelity, and redemption, raw, honest, and deeply human. Each episode dives into the tangled lives of those facing heartbreak and hard choices, where truth isn't always clean, but growth is always possible. Now on to today's story. Victoria Mornings. Chapter 1, Morning Brew. Victoria, British Columbia. The kettle hissed just before dawn, like a snake disturbed from slumber. Luke Matheson poured the hot water over freshly ground beans, the steam rising into the dim light of Anchor and Pine, his cafe tucked near Bastion Square. Mornings in Victoria carried a kind of coastal stillness, soft, gray, and slow to wake, just the way he liked it. He moved with the precise economy of someone who had once taken orders in Kandahar and cleaned rifles under desert sun. That life was behind him now. 5 years out of the forces, he had traded command briefings and tactical patrols for cappuccinos and scones. Still, certain things stayed. His back straight as a flagpole, his attention always just a bit more focused than anyone else's. The bell above the door jingled at 6:45 a.m. sharp. First customer, like clockwork. "Morning, Luke," said Marlene, the retired postmaster who always ordered a black Americano and left a toonie in the tip jar without fail. "Morning, Marlene," he replied, already sliding her drink toward her. He looked out the cafe windows as he always did, the routine as much a comfort as it was a control measure. Government Street was still quiet. A few buses rolled past, their interiors ghostly with sleeping commuters. Light rain had fallen overnight, misting the pavement to a dark sheen. At 7:10, the door opened again. "Hey, babe," came the familiar voice. Sasha looked like she always did. Windswept hair under a green parka, camera bag over one shoulder, her ID badge swinging from her neck with the Destination Victoria logo on it. Her lips brushed his cheek as she passed behind the counter. "Bus was late," she said, grabbing a muffin. "I'll eat on the go." He handed her a latte without being asked. "You slept through your second alarm." She paused slightly, a half second too long, before forcing a smile. "Must have been exhausted. Meetings all day? You know how it is." Luke nodded, but didn't say anything. He noted the detail. Her mascara applied with haste, a faint cologne that wasn't hers. He filed it. Not a confrontation, just an observation. "Dinner tonight?" he asked. "Can't. Staff mixer at Canoe Club. Tourism Week kickoff." "Wasn't that last night?" She blinked. "No. Last night was planning. Tonight's the event." He held her gaze a moment too long. Sasha grabbed her muffin and kissed his cheek again, this time cooler. "I'll see you later," she said, walking out into the drizzle. Luke stood behind the counter and slowly stirred his own coffee, watching her walk toward Government Street. A small detail, she didn't turn around to wave like she usually did. He took a slow sip and stared past the rain-flecked glass. Discipline didn't leave you. Situational awareness stayed sharp. And when the story didn't match the rhythm you knew by heart, well, that's when you started asking questions. Chapter 2, The Little Things. Luke didn't believe in hunches. He believed in patterns. Repetition was its own truth. Where someone went, what time they went, how they spoke when they got there. The military had drilled that into him. Routines didn't lie. People did. By 9 a.m., the cafe had picked up. Young couples in Arc'teryx jackets, older tourists with Nikon DSLRs, students tucked behind laptops sipping oat milk lattes. Luke worked the room with calm precision. Register, frother, oven, mugs, and smiles. But part of his mind was still back at the door, watching Sasha walk off into the mist. At 11:30, his part-timer, Kevin, arrived, a business student from Camosun, always 10 minutes early, always high on caffeine and optimism. "I got it from here, boss," Kevin grinned, slinging on an apron. Luke gave a nod and hung up his towel. "I'll be back in an hour." He didn't take lunch often. When he did, it usually meant something. Today, it meant confirmation. The walk to the tourism office was brisk. Downtown Victoria was alive now. Buses hissed, tourists with maps wandered aimlessly, and delivery vans blocked half the curb lanes. The tourism building was a modern affair, all glass and exposed wood, tucked behind the Parliament lawns. Luke didn't go inside. He stood across the street under a shared awning and pulled out his phone, pretending to scroll. He waited. At 11:48, Sasha exited with a man. late 30s, tall, neat beard, beige trench coat, lanyard ID tucked into his chest pocket. They weren't touching, but their proximity was close. Too close. She was laughing, an easy, free kind of laugh Luke hadn't heard from her in weeks. The man said something, and Sasha looked up at him, smiling. Luke watched the pause, the timing, the way she touched her hair. That's not a coworker laugh, he thought. That's a soft entry point. They turned toward Wharf Street, probably heading for lunch. Luke didn't follow. He'd seen enough. Not confrontation, just more data. He walked back the long way, past the water, where a harbor taxi sputtered toward Fisherman's Wharf. A float plane lifted off the inner harbor with a rising whine. The ocean didn't care. It just moved. Tides in, tides out. Predictable. Honest. Back at the cafe, Kevin was dealing with a small line of customers. "You good?" Luke asked as he slipped behind the counter. "All yours." Some tourists tried to pay in US coins again. Luke nodded but didn't smile. He poured himself a double espresso and stood by the back window, looking out. The thing about betrayal, he thought, was that it rarely showed up in grand gestures. It leaked in, slow and quiet. A late bus, a changed story, a different scent. He didn't feel rage. Not yet. Just a growing clarity. Chapter 3, Traces. Wednesday morning. By the time Luke unlocked the cafe at 5:30 the next morning, he had already done two things: brewed coffee at home and opened a private browser on his laptop to search Destination Victoria team profiles. He wasn't looking to confirm suspicion anymore. That part was done. Now he was identifying the player, the man in the beige trench coat. It didn't take long. Under the Marketing and Partnerships tab, there he was, Eli Hastings, Director of Industry Engagement, former corporate consultant. Smiled like a man used to closing deals over wine and charcuterie boards. Luke stared at the screen. The jawline matched. The blazer was different, but the way he carried his shoulders was the same. Luke had a soldier's eye for posture. He clicked away without saving anything. No screenshots. No bookmarks. Leave no trail. By 7 o'clock, Sasha texted. "Sasha? Busy day again. Don't wait up for dinner. Canoe club thing might run late. Sasha? Love you." Yellow Heart Luke stared at the message for a while before pocketing his phone. At 8:10, while cleaning the grinder, he made his next quiet move. He took an old iPhone from the drawer under the sink. It had no SIM, but the camera worked fine. He left it charging beside the mop bucket in the back room. Tonight, he would bring it home. That evening, Sasha was already dressed when he got back from the gym. Her makeup was clean, simple, but sharper than usual. Red lipstick, hair in a bun. Her dress was one he hadn't seen in over a year, black and fitted. "Still going to Canoe Club?" he asked, setting his gym bag down. "Yeah," she said, brushing on her coat. "It's networking. You know how it is." He nodded, not looking up from his water bottle. "Don't wait up, okay?" she said at the door, giving him a kiss on the cheek. Luke didn't say anything, just watched her walk out. Later, he left the cafe phone set on the windowsill of their apartment. It faced the street, angled toward the sidewalk below. She wouldn't notice it, even if she came home tonight. And if she didn't, it would catch the moment she was dropped off. He made dinner alone. Chicken and rice. No wine. No music. The quiet was its own kind of confirmation. 10:57 p.m. No Sasha. Luke checked the iPhone. Battery at 68%. No movement outside yet. He sat back on the couch, stared at the ceiling fan, and let his mind go still. Not angry. Not yet. But the picture was forming. He had the name, the face, the lies. And soon, he'd have the final piece. Chapter 4, The Stillness Before. Thursday afternoon. Luke stood behind the cafe counter, polishing glass mugs with a precision that came more from muscle memory than necessity. The midday lull had set in. No tourists, no locals on laptops. Just the low hum of the fridge and the occasional soft clink of ceramic. He liked this part of the day. It gave him time to think. On the counter beside him lay a yellow legal pad, half covered in clean, orderly notes. Eli Hastings, photo confirmed, Tourism Victoria site, works under same department as Sasha, Facebook, tagged twice in 2 weeks with Sasha. Recent event, Canoe Club X2, patterns, drop-offs after 11 p.m., 3x. He flipped the page over and tapped the pen once against the counter. Luke wasn't the jealous type. He hadn't raised his voice in a relationship since his early 20s. But he had rules. One of them was simple. If you need to lie to someone to keep them, you don't deserve them. The line had been crossed. And while Sasha hadn't confessed, Luke had learned long ago that you didn't need someone to admit to betrayal. You only needed to be sure. That evening, he didn't mention the new information. When Sasha returned at midnight, hair windblown, eyes glassy from wine, he pretended to be half asleep on the couch. "Hey, babe," she whispered, peeling off her coat. "Late one," he mumbled, voice gravel-thick with sleep. "Yeah, God, those people love to talk." She disappeared into the bathroom. He heard the click of the lock. A shower turned on. Luke opened his eyes, wide awake. Friday. The next morning, Luke left the cafe in the hands of Emily, his part-time barista. She was trustworthy, local, and knew her way around the espresso machine. "I've got a supply run and a call with the equipment guy," he said as she arrived. "No problem," she said. "Take your time. I've got the open mic sign-up sheet ready too." Instead of driving to the supplier, Luke parked across the street from the Destination Victoria offices. A beige 3-story building tucked behind the Royal BC Museum, with large windows and a blue and white branded awning. At 9:03, Sasha arrived. Her stride was purposeful, boots clicking on wet pavement. She was alone. At 9:07, Eli showed up. He wore a navy wool coat, phone pressed to his ear. He walked past Sasha at the entrance and didn't acknowledge her. Luke watched the body language. No exchange, no subtle glance. If he hadn't known better, he'd think they were strangers. But he did know better. Because 2 nights ago, the camera had caught something different. He pulled out the iPhone from his coat pocket and tapped the screen. There, grainy but clear, was Sasha leaning into a luxury SUV. Passenger side door. Eli's profile visible behind the wheel. Her hand on his arm just before she got out. She hadn't seen the phone. She hadn't expected anyone to be watching. Luke put the phone away. He wasn't interested in revenge. He wasn't going to throw a tantrum. But he was going to leave her with the truth, and no room to spin it. He didn't want apologies. He didn't need tears. Just facts. A clean break. Dignity intact. He started planning his last conversation with her in his head. Chapter 5, Precision. Saturday evening. It was raining again. Not a downpour, just that soft, wet mist that Victoria seemed to specialize in. Like the sky couldn't commit to a storm, but wanted to leave a mark anyway. Luke had closed the cafe early. A chalkboard sign out front read, "Closed at 4 p.m. for maintenance. See you Sunday." Inside the apartment, he set the table with care. 2 plates, 1 wine glass, and a mug of water. Sasha preferred red wine with pasta. Luke hadn't opened a bottle. He didn't want her relaxed. He wanted her honest. She came through the door just after 6:30, damp hair tucked into her scarf. She looked tired. Or guilty. Or both. "You cooked?" she said, setting her keys on the counter. "Yeah. Figured we needed a quiet night." She smiled cautiously. "That's sweet." He didn't respond. They sat. He served the pasta, penne with roasted vegetables and sausage. Her favorite. She twirled a bite onto her fork. He didn't eat. She noticed. "What's up?" she asked, pausing mid-bite. Luke leaned back, his face unreadable. "I know about Eli," he said calmly. The fork froze. Her lips parted slightly, but no sound came out. He continued. "The nights at Canoe Club. The SUV. The touch on his arm. I know." She set the fork down, clinking it against the porcelain. "Luke," he held up a hand. Not angrily, just with finality. "I'm not interested in a debate. Or explanations. This isn't a trial." Her eyes filled, mouth trembling. It wasn't serious. It was a mistake. "No," he interrupted. "A mistake is locking your keys in the car. This was deliberate, coordinated, and ongoing." She fell silent. "I noticed the patterns a month ago," he said. "Small tells. You stopped waving goodbye. You started hiding your phone. I didn't jump to conclusions, I gathered facts. That's what I do." Sasha leaned forward, desperate. "I didn't mean to hurt you. I didn't think you'd catch you," he finished. "That's the problem. You counted on me not noticing. That's worse than the cheating." Tears welled, but Luke didn't flinch. "I'm not here to scream," he said. "I won't humiliate you. I won't trash your name. But I'm done." She stared at him, stunned. "I've already packed a bag," he said. "I'm going to stay above the cafe for a while. You'll have the apartment until the lease is up. Then it's yours if you want it." She reached for his hand. "Please." We can fix this. He stood. No, he said simply. I fix machines. I fix coffee grinders. I don't fix trust that's been thrown away. She sobbed quietly as he picked up his coat. At the door, he paused and looked back. I loved you, Sasha. I did. But I love my peace more. Then he stepped out into the rain, pulling the hood over his head as the door clicked shut behind him. Chapter 6. Anchor and Pine. 2 weeks later. Mornings came earlier now, not because Luke needed more time, but because he wanted the silence. He'd moved into the tiny apartment above the cafe, a space once meant for short-term stays and visiting friends. It had a kitchenette, a worn leather armchair, and a single window that looked down onto Wharf Street. It suited him. Tight, efficient, quiet. The first week, he'd barely spoken to anyone outside work. Customers came and went, the espresso machine hissed, the barista's schedule rotated. Emily had asked once if he was okay. He had nodded. That was enough. No dramatic updates on social media. No big goodbye. Luke hadn't told anyone about Sasha. No mutual friends dragged into it. He'd erased her softly, like pencil marks rubbed away from the margins. One morning, while restocking shelves behind the counter, he found an old photo tucked between invoices. Him and Sasha, smiling at Butchert Gardens, hands wrapped around paper coffee cups. It had been snapped by a stranger who'd offered. They looked happy. Maybe they were. He stared at it for a moment, then slid it into the shredder without a second thought. His habits had changed subtly. He walked longer. Twice a week, he took the seawall from Ogden Point all the way to the Johnson Street Bridge, then looped back through Chinatown. Not for exercise, just for air. People moved in waves down the sidewalks. Tourists, college students, street buskers with guitars, retired couples holding hands. Luke watched, never intruding. One Tuesday afternoon, he wandered into Russell Books on Fort Street. Bought a worn paperback on Stoic philosophy. He read a chapter a night. The words felt less like advice and more like reminders of what he already knew. You have power over your mind, not outside events. On the 15th day after leaving Sasha, a new customer came in around 10:30 a.m. She was in her 30s, auburn hair, denim jacket, camera slung over one shoulder. Tourist, most likely. She ordered a cappuccino, then paused. You the owner? She asked. I am. You've got a good thing going here, she said, smiling. Place feels calm. Luke looked at her and nodded once. That's the idea. She paid, took her cup, and sat by the window. Pulled out a notepad and started sketching the harbor skyline. Her lines were quick and precise. Luke watched from behind the counter. Not intrusively, just curious. He didn't feel ready for anything. Not romance. Not connection. But he noticed her. And that meant something. That evening, Luke closed up the cafe, locked the door, and stepped into the cool night air. The wind had a bit of bite to it, but it was clean and salt-touched. Upstairs, he poured himself a glass of water, sat in the armchair, and stared out the window. The city moved below, quiet, alive, forgiving. He wasn't angry anymore. Not even hurt. He just felt light. Epilogue, first light. 6 months later. The mornings were still early, but they no longer felt heavy. The cafe had grown busier with spring. The windows stayed open longer. Music played soft jazz in the background, and tourists mixed with locals, all drawn by the scent of warm pastries and good coffee. The regulars, Janice from the bookstore, David the postman, 2 students from UVic, knew Luke by name now, knew his silences too, and respected them. He'd reupholstered the booths in March, painted the back wall a deeper shade of pine green. Subtle changes, quiet improvements. The artist, her name was Maeve, had returned in April, not just to sketch, but to stay. She was between cities. Montreal had gotten too crowded. Victoria, she said, gave her space to breathe. They weren't dating. Not exactly. But they shared breakfast sometimes. Her croissant crumbs scattered on the table while she sketched rooftops and tugboats. They didn't talk about pasts. Didn't need to. Whatever existed between them was soft and light and easy. Luke had no expectations. That, in itself, was a kind of peace. One Sunday, Maeve brought in a small canvas. For the wall, she said. It was a painting of the cafe. The early morning version, dim light, fog curling in through the windows, a figure behind the counter in silhouette. It captured everything the place was meant to be. Still, warm, grounded. Luke hung it behind the register. He never said thank you. She didn't expect him to. That night, he locked up, turned off the lights, and went upstairs. The window in the apartment was open. He sat in his old armchair with a mug of chamomile tea, legs stretched out, breeze drifting through. There were no ghosts here, just wind, and time, and a man who had walked away from the lie and hadn't looked back. End.